All right.
Are we live?
We are. Hello, Sophie Kravits. How are you, my friend?
Hi, Phil. It's super to see you. I,
Yeah, it's been a while.
I was just going to say, obviously, to the people who are watching, Bill and I have been chatting up a storm already pre-show.
Yes, we have. Yes. So I know Sophie from Hackaday. We won't be talking about Hackaday a lot today, other than we met there, and it was a cool time, and it was the cool things we did back then. And I had one person already tell us they recognized this picture right here. Whoops, I can't make it bigger. From back when we toured Adafruit and got to spend some bar time with the good folks there. So it was a good time. That was the Disrupt New York. Do you
Oh my
thing?
God, that was so long ago. It's like
It
2000.
was.
Wow,
I still didn't have hair, but yes, it was a while ago. Yeah.
that was such a fun weekend and such a like weird introduction to New York's TechCrunch disrupt.
Yeah. It was a 24-hour event, and they brought in beer and made sure they handed out little eye shades in case you wanted to sleep in your chair. It was pretty interesting event.
Yeah, I think I went to bed around 2 because I was.
Yeah. Well, right. When I was young, I could go days without sleep, right? And it's just as you get older, you kind of start slipping out when nobody notices. That's what I did. I went to bed about 2 and then came back about 6 or 7 the next morning.
You know, the thing that I remember a lot about that one weekend was that it was the ESP 8266 was just coming online. And so people
Right?
doing all these hacks to make it work. And I remember this because I was one of the organizers of our Hackaday team at Disrupt. So I was pretty busy with that. But sort of in between, I was trying to hack on this part to get it to work. And it was so freaking confusing that like you had to download this thing from here and this thing from over here and then make it talk. Like it was really hard. Oh, and then to get it to program, you had to hit 2 different pins. Remember that you have to like pull to ground and then
Yep.
one goes up, down or something. I'm looking, actually, this is like some papers here from another project using it. And then Adafruit, luckily, made some dev boards and published how to do it. They had some system to automate the programming thing, some
Right.
sister. I bet you can explain it better than I can. But I used the ESP 8266 and the 32 with great ease later.
Yeah. Yeah. And kudos to Adafruit for doing exactly what you just said, which is they take a piece of hardware and make it usable by the masses.
Yes.
To get you over those. And, I don't want to say I'm not a fan of the Arduino. I used the chip that's in the Arduino 25, now probably 30 years ago as a keyboard controller.
Mm-hmm.
But what the Arduino environment did was make it so I could sit down and show it to my son, and within an hour he was writing a Morse code, enunciator.
That's amazing.
And starting to show him how to use a subroutine instead of hard coding dot dit dot. Okay, now make a subroutine for a dot and one for a dash. And so yeah, their support, their drivers. What they do, it makes my head spin at my elderly age here, the amount of work they turn out. So have you been in touch with them lately? I know that they did. They were getting into the PBE, not the PBE, but respirators, open source respirators. Did I hear that right?
They I don't remember how many that they shipped, but they were really influential in the New York community, along with New York Makes PPE, NYC Resistor, My Hackerspace. There were a lot of New York groups, and Adafruit was one of them that did a lot to help out with the PPE effort. And
Yeah.
I just looked on New York Makes PPE. That's a Discord channel, and it looks like they just shipped some stuff last month.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a
Well,
list for April and May. Are we? Yeah, we're in June now.
yeah, yeah, and I think the pandemic's moved from being in our opinion, a U.S. problem. Now we see the global needs, and so the need for respirators and whatnot has not gone down in my book.
No.
So that's all very cool.
Yeah,
So
recently joined the board of directors at Helpful Engineering, which
Oh, cool.
thing that, yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention this in the pre-show. I will officially join in a couple of days, but I've been on a few calls with them. So what Helpful did in the beginning of the pandemic, and probably many engineers who are listening or who will listen later have heard of them, because they spun up a Slack channel from scratch, and within a few weeks there was about 18,000 people on it, and it was kind of like a shit show. Like there was a lot of projects and coordination happening. I joined very early on as well. Couldn't really figure out how to get on a project, but of course, you know, we were all learning in the very beginning of the pandemic for how to help or how to stay home, like everything. We all had to learn all these things, right? So now, post US pandemic, anyway, it's a global organization. Helpful is focusing on some of the other countries that need respirators, oxygen concentrators, and so on, but specifically making products or helping open source hardware engineers make products. And getting, have a lot of regulatory people on staff too. This is, sorry, Bill, I'm interrupting.
Are they still on Slack, or are they also on Discord? No, keep going. I just, that was the one question I had, is can you give us a link or tell somebody where to go to learn more?
I can. Do you have show notes?
Do I have what?
You make show notes? I can give you a link to put somewhere, or if there's somewhere to...
Yeah, I don't have anything right now. Can you just...
Yeah, for sure. If people want to join the Helpful Engineering Slack, there are a ton of projects. There's a ton of need for people who can wrangle projects. Like, I'm learning really fast that there's a dramatic need for engineers who can also be good product managers. Yes,
yeah. And that is a different kind of engineer, is the person that can do both of those.
Yes, yeah. And you also have to enjoy dealing with a lot of different personality types.
Right. So that sounds exciting. You just got on the board of directors of that, and anything else that you can say about that was pretty cool. Are they on Discord, or who were you talking about was on Discord earlier?
Oh, now I've forgotten. Who did I say was on Discord? Helpful Engineering is on Slack.
Okay.
I know there is not a Discord channel. There are a lot of projects going on, people who want to work on things like respirators or oxygen concentrators, or proposing new projects that have to do with helping the world in some way with technology, product design. They can go to the Slack and kind of poke around and pretty easily figure out how to propose something. Right.
Very cool.
So we're applying for grants, applying for financial aid to help get some of these projects going. One of the things that I'll be helping with is connecting people and companies that want to work with us. Cool.
You kind of, well, that's how I know you as well, back from the Hackaday days, is you were part of the glue that connected the various things going on, and you took care of me on my YouTube channel too. I never jumped over there to see the chats, and you told me that you were taking care of the chats on the Hackaday videos I would do.
Those are really good videos too. And people are always so enthusiastic about, there's this one that you're doing with a car, maybe you're fiberglassing a car. That is like the most enthusiastic comments I've ever seen on a YouTube channel.
Yeah, it got a bunch of hits, and people were like, well, why are you talking? Because it wasn't even fiberglass, it was resin that I was doing, right? It's just, we call it fiberglassing, but I was actually pulling fleece type, actually polyester type material, stretching it, applying resins to it, and then all the sanding and all that work that goes with it. And the people that found it in YouTube didn't realize that it was part of a Hackaday post that had all the background information. So I did see a lot of like, where's this coming from? Why are you talking about fiberglass? What's with the car? You know? And it was like, oh yeah, it's because I never thought of the video as not existing outside of the Hackaday post itself.
Well, there were plenty of people who were like, "Oh, showing us how it's done, how to fiberglass a car." And I'm like, "Wow, this is amazing! So many people have time on their hands to watch Bill fiberglass a car."
I didn't. I honestly, I don't watch YouTube videos very much. I haven't watched one of mine after I've made it. You know, though I'll reference the posts and stuff because there were some interesting topics.
Yeah.
One we keep coming back to was the high speed. Actually, this is something I talked with Lamore the night that we took the picture down in the lower right corner there. People were cracking on her for having square corners on I/O lines on the PC boards. It doesn't matter at I/O speeds whether it's a square corner or a rounded corner or whatnot. So I did a Hackaday post. Finally, I got fed up with it, and I showed I have the equipment in the back, got it off eBay, and I ran a TDR on it and showed that the square corners at the normal speeds don't matter. There's a ton of other things like badly used vias, things like that. And so I had a blast with that part because that let people see into the world I lived in for a while, the high-speed world of things.
I didn't read that post. I suddenly, like right when you're saying that, I'm thinking about, somebody recently posted a board, like a picture of one of my boards, and immediately everyone on Twitter is like, right angles, you have right angles. And I'm like, okay, this stuff is not moving very quickly. It's just going on and off. It's flipping.
Right.
I don't know that it really matters.
No, it doesn't. And the primary thing is a right angle, just that little extra material of the corner looks like a little bit extra capacitance, but the signal goes by at 7/10 the speed of light. It's like, bump, you know, it doesn't do anything unless you're at like 12 gig or something like that, you know, like you're doing true microwave design.
What happens?
So, yeah.
So, yeah, I'm curious now. Tell me, how does a right angle affect a high speed?
You know what? Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. Again, it affects it by virtue that a straight trace has a definite width, and so compared to the ground plane, it's got a constant capacitance. So it's a constant transmission line with a constant impedance. But when you make a right angle corner, it's got an extra width to it. There's a right angle. Let me pull up the Hackaday post since we're talking about it. So the big part was also who's making your PC boards and how good are they making the PC boards. Here we go. Whoops. Yeah, I'm probably not going to be able to. I've got it, but it's not coming up. Yeah, so you'll have to take my word on it that it appears like an additional lump of capacitance is what it does. So it changes the impedance, but again, it's not like it's a huge feature. It's a very small feature. And these, you know, the propagation, because we know it's not about electrons. It's about that field. You know, electrons are when you're doing DC. It's about the electromotive field that goes racing down that line otherwise. And again, it just sees them as small speed bumps. What it sees worse is if you hit a via, let's say you have a via that goes through an 8-layer board, but you only went to the second layer. That additional via looks like this antenna hanging off of it. And those are far worse because the signal then goes up and down the via, which makes a reflection, and it becomes, you know, it's more problematic. But I'll bet nobody on Twitter said, hey, you've got vias that are acting as antennas, right? They're going right angles because that's the one rule they heard, and that's what they respond. And that's what Lamore and I talked about the night at the bar, was like right angles and high-speed techniques and stuff. So
that's pretty cool. I never thought about it like that. Have you done anything with power over Ethernet?
With PoE?
Yeah.
I support it as a networker. I don't know the actual intricacies of the, I used to know actually, of the earlier equipment, the handshake that says, well, I need this number of watts. Well, I agree to give you this number of watts. So it is actually a signaling that's going on there. But it's the kind of thing an engineer could learn in a week, you know, by studying real hard.
Yeah, it just came up in a project that I was quoting. So I wonder is it an actual protocol?
I think of it as a handshake protocol, but it's not part of the TCP/IP stack or anything like that. So it's I'll get into trouble talking about it more than that. If somebody in the Discord wants to call it what it is, there's about a 30-second delay from us to when it appears on the web on YouTube.
Where does
and so and so if somebody might chime in, the people that follow us are really good at chiming in with technical details that when Ben or I don't know something. Hang on, now you. Somebody's mentioning the.
Well, if someone is actually commenting about this, I'm curious to know if it is something that you have to design extra shielding for noise, or is it very good at shielding noise? Because you've got all those pairs in it, right?
Yeah, the UTP spec is all about, the unshielded twisted pair spec is all about noise rejection, the number of twists. It gives you that. They call it common mode rejection, though I've been learning to call it just common signal injection. Hang on a second. I was going to bring up, I found the, here's the corner capacitance thing.
Oh, nice.
So you can see this little corner right here is the additional capacitance. So it's not much. It's 1/2 a square of the material itself. So that's what I was trying to talk about. Here's the other one that I always bring up. This is all from my Hackaday post. And that is that the frequency that we talk about is related to the rise time, not the actual clock. You could have a 1 meg clock, but it's the rise time that'll get you. And that rise time, this part right here, has something called an angular frequency, and you can calculate the bandwidth from it. So you might have a gigahertz spraying off of your 1 megahertz clock.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a fun post to do for Hackaday, trying to get those things through to people.
I noticed that in that post, just as you were scrolling, that you define what you call high speed. At what speed do you define that?
It's what I actually wrote can mean different things to different people depending on what they're used to working on. For me, it's where the energy of the rising and falling edges of the signal dominate the behavior. So above 350 megahertz. It's not about the 20 meg clock that feeds your ESP8266. It's about how the frequency that's riding on those rising and falling edges of that. So for me, I call high speed, above 350 meg, it becomes a different world for me. So, and that's where we used to do the FCC, where we would scan to make sure, what's funny about FCC was they're not trying to keep you from interfering with your own equipment. They don't want you to interfere with your neighbor's equipment. So that, and I actually have the antennas here and stuff to do FCC scanning to this day, though I'll probably have to, before I get too old, I have to find a place to give, somebody to give them to or whatnot. You get old and move to a condo, there's probably not room for a full RF lab, right?
Are you licensed to do certifications?
No, we didn't have licenses for that. The lab itself needs to be certified, and by that they needed to certify the equipment as traceable back to NIST, National Institute of Standards, and whatever the T stands for. But my cool story that I like to say is I would do the scanning in the lab, and I got so good at it that when I would show up, I would be within 2 dB of what the calibrated equipment would do. Mm-hmm. And they trusted me so much that I would tell them, look at this point first, and if that one passes, the rest will pass. By the way, here's the other points you need to look at. And they trusted me that, and I never ever abused it. I never tried to hide a problem. I would walk into the lab and say, here's my problem, make sure I pass. And so I had, it was radiation sciences out of near Philadelphia who trusted me back in the old days. So it was a cool relationship to have.
I wonder how the testing labs did during the pandemic. You know, we hear a lot about certain types, like the restaurants had a really hard time, or a lot of restaurants had a hard time. Haven't heard
Right.
anything about test labs. I mean, what, there's probably under 200 in the whole United States. And I know we have a global audience, but, you know, we're just New York,
Yeah.
US.
And I have to admit, I don't go anywhere. I kind of made my own little corner. I live in New Jersey, unfortunately, but I have like 10 acres and I've got a whole menagerie of animals. And that's kind of, so for me, when the pandemic hit, I'm sitting in my office right now. It didn't change how I worked for the most part. So in other words, I'm becoming a hermit, ahead of the curve.
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. For me,
Hey,
traveling.
go ahead.
No, just the pandemic for me it was really nice actually to have a whole year of not, aside from all the awful stuff that was going on everywhere, which of course affected everybody's mood. But it's pretty nice to have a whole year of not traveling and working on projects.
Yeah. You know what? I'm afraid to drive my car now. It's been so long since I've driven it. I go out and start it, make sure the battery works. I have it on a battery charger and stuff. I'm actually kind of got anxiety about going and start driving again and flying again and whatnot. I've really enjoyed being out here in the country. So, yeah.
Well, I've driven enough I mean, for us, for anyone who's watching on, you know, from somewhere else in the country, I feel like the East Coast is slightly ahead. Maybe we're 2 weeks ahead of maybe the middle of the country. So where everything is, masks are optional. Like, so I've started driving in the last 2 weeks and I have to get gas, which is amazing.
Right. Right.
Gas for the whole year.
I put that gas stabilizer in my truck. I've still got the gas from like a year and a half ago out in it. So yeah, I totally hear you.
That was smart. So what do you think the next wave of radio communications is going to be? Like I think that 5G is happening everywhere. And
right.
I don't actually have any idea if the infrastructure is there or not. Do you?
Well, there's so much money behind it that the infrastructure will be there for some at least. But I really can't comment on how good the 5G stuff. I mean, I've been studying it. I understand how it does the MIMO antenna work and how it does the multipath and stuff. But that's for people above my pay grade, as we say. But you're doing something with the 900 megahertz stuff you were telling me about.
Yeah, I have a couple things. Well, one is just a personal project, which I unfortunately shipped the board, so I can't.
It's always good. Ship it.
It's really it's an art project with collaborators Adele Lynn and Matt Pinner, two people that I work with quite a lot. And it is badges. It's like we started this project in 2019 with all the optimism of badge life. And it just feels very far away now. But anyway, these badges communicate with each other over 900 megahertz. There is going to be a central hub that sends out signals to these two radios, or to all the radios. And there will be maybe 200 of them that will be worn by wedding guests. So this is
wow.
A wedding. And the idea is that there will be patterns that will help guests know where to go or what to do at different times. And it's an experiential wedding. In 2019, we thought it will be in 5 different locations in New York City. So we would start off in a subway station. Guests would arrive, meeting us in a subway station. Then we to like the botanical gardens. There would be stuff with the badges on the subway cars. Like we were thinking about doing some kind of communications throughout the subway cars. So like the person with the hub could be like, blink 3 times. Everyone who gets that blink has to get off now at this station. That kind of thing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow, there's a lot of use for that. Virtual tours, there's a lot of things you could do with that.
Yeah, it was a really It's a really fun project. So it was done with a Atmega 328. So I designed the hardware, and Matt and Adele are working on the firmware or software. I'm not sure which. I guess firmware, right? If it sits on a chip, it's called a firmware. So it's got the Atmega 328. We used Arduino IDE because it has such a community, and frankly, I wanted to be able to cut and paste for test code.
Me too. I hate reinventing stuff.
Yeah, showing myself as the real engineer that I am. I cut and paste from the Arduino forum. And it also had I'm trying to remember the name of the radio, the RFM 69 HCW, so a long range radio. But then somewhere in there, so that's how that is designed, that 900 megahertz radio. And it's pretty, again, Adafruit published some really great documentation on things that they did with the RFM 69. So I was able to just learn how they wired it. It's a module, so there's nothing.
Right. It's even FCC certified, probably, if it's coming out of Adafruit.
Yeah, so nothing complex in doing the wiring, but more like, do you forget to put a capacitor? Well, one of the things is what looks like pin 1 is pin 16. I don't know, it's easy to get it upside down. So it's very nice to have Adafruit's sort of layout to be like, okay,
right,
what the heck this pin number is, that's where the antenna goes. I don't have.
So what kind of antenna did you use? Like a chip antenna, or the PC board itself as an antenna feature?
I think in a future version, I would want to use the PC board, just make it right in there. But no, for these initial ones, I cut a piece of wire from there that was 3 1/4 inches, and soldered it on, and that
half a dipole. Yeah, that's cool.
And honestly, that's usually what I do for my first round of antennas.
Yeah, just get it working.
Yeah,
type thing. Now, does the RFM 69, does that look like a serial port to the core, or how do you talk to the radio?
You talk to it through SPI, but it also has.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it also has RxTX. So, yeah, and it also has some GPIO, which I didn't end up needing to use. We needed so many GPIO, we just put an MCU on the board. But I think I've done something else with the radio. It's bad, right? When you've done so many prototype quick projects, you can't remember. I think I did something where I was blinking 1 or 2 LEDs with it. I don't know. Someone on YouTube is just going to say, no, there's no GPIOs on that chip. I honestly don't remember.
Yeah. There should be if there isn't, but there probably is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is. And I'm looking behind me because I'm like, do I have one sitting there? I don't think I do. Yeah. I'm not prepared to show off anything, I guess, on this call.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you joining us, especially on short notice like this. And any projects you do have, I was going to say, what else did you do with the ESP8266? Anything come to mind?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the main thing that I did with it, and I worked on this project for 2 years, obviously not full time, but I made a blimp controller, and that I've done a few talks on different conferences, and I absolutely loved that project. So I used the ESP8266 to communicate over Wi-Fi between the blimp controller, a remote control, and the blimp itself, which it has a gondola and sits underneath of a balloon that's maybe 24 inches in diameter. My vision for this was that we would be at a conference, there would be sort of a choreographed routine. I had some idea that blimps could dance, for us.
Right. There's the art side showing through.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really good idea and could be very beautiful, but Wi-Fi is probably not the way to do it. It's very slow, as I found out. It's crazy. Things work really well once, and then you start adding more things to the network, and suddenly you're like, oh, it doesn't, nothing is.
The issues go up at a square term, it seems like. Yeah, you make something twice as complicated, and it has 4 times the issues.
Yes, yeah, and issues that are your communication, like your bits are literally in the air, not moving fast enough, that isn't really, in a way, that's not really,
It's cool.
that's not a solvable problem. It's like, got to move to, which is why we went with the 900 megahertz for those wedding badges, because Wi-Fi, I had learned in the last project that Wi-Fi was just not going to work out.
We had a spectrum analyzer. We had Alan Wolke on a couple weeks ago, and we had him show us his Tektronix spectrum analyzer, and then we had him turn on his microwave oven. And you realize just what a battle zone the ISM band, Industrial Scientific Medical Band, where Wi-Fi lives, and Bluetooth and your microwave ovens. It's a battle zone. He had a word for it. I can't remember, but it's just this area where you're just fighting it out with everybody else to be heard. And yeah, it's 900 meg now. That's not, my memory's hazy. That's not a license band if you're under a watt, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, but I'm calling it 900. It's 915.
915.
Yes,
yeah.
It is actually a licensed band. It's for toys, like remote control cars.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and then it's like 453 maybe in Europe. There's like different bands that are used for different.
Right.
I know this because of the toys, right? Making toys. They all have like some toys come with a little switch so you can go between different frequencies.
Wow. So,
and they cost like $12.99 too, which is really kind of, when you're like, oh, I spent 2 years on this thing and probably like whatever, like hundreds of dollars trying to get the PCB just right. And then it's like, oh, could just like buy that thing for $20 on Amazon.
It's harder to design stuff these days than, back in the 80s. I took a circuit made by Kodak, actually, that was an ultrasonic distance detector. It was used for their Polaroid cameras. And I hung it on the back of a car. Actually, the full story is, we were working on an ultrasonic baby detector in your pool. Like if your kid fell in the pool, this alarm would go off and something's fallen in the pool. Or if kids are getting in your pool at night or something. So it was a security alarm for a pool. And basically what it would do is it would ping at the 40 kilohertz, ping the pool, and let all the reflections come in. Whereas normally a fish finder just deals with the initial return of the signal. We would get all these bounces and reflections around the corner, the ladder, the rope of the thing. But we would still build up a picture of what the pool looked like. And then if you could walk over and stick your foot behind the ladder and this alarm would go off, it'd go, whatever it is, it changed. But meanwhile, it would learn that the rope slapping or the floating toy, it would track that. It'd go, no, I know about that. And we did all this with the 6502, right? Well, I got tired of getting wet because we had a pool in the I don't want to say lab area, but in the factory area. And so I'd always have to be working bent over in the water. So I made an air model. I made an air swimming pool with this air ultrasonics, slightly different, but they behave the same as water. Well, I hung it on the back of a vehicle. And this is 1986. Went for a drive. Nobody wanted to pass me, first off, because I've got this radar array hanging off the back of the car, and they thought I was a cop. Happened to be a black station wagon. My boss is still fighting Ford. He went and patented that, the ultrasonic backup alarms. So he never got paid from Ford because, they ripped off the people that did the intermittent wiper thing too. But the worst part was when I went to buy my Ford Explorer, the guy tries to explain to me how the backup alarm works. And I can't say, I know, I designed it in 1986. Yeah, I didn't really even design it, right? It's just anybody could have designed it. We just happened to have patented the thing I did. And so, yeah, I had to let him tell me how the backup alarm works and everything. So, but it was 1986. It hadn't all been invented. Nowadays, it's hard to find something that somebody's not already doing, like you said, for $12.99. Totally. And I believe absolutely that a good engineer doesn't try and reinvent the wheel. We go and we find what already works. We leverage it. We don't black box it, right? Yeah. We have to know how it works if we're going to use it, because we'll own all the issues that it makes. But yeah, it's harder these days. I had it easy back in the 8-bit days, is what I'm trying to say. You know, it's like you throw a rock and it's something new. Not anymore.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also, I mean, electrical principles stay the same, but the software, people who are doing software, all of that kind of stuff is changing. Like all the tools change all the time. So I feel pretty lucky because oscilloscopes and test equipment, it's like the kind of thing you buy and that's it. Like you don't buy it again maybe in your life, or maybe you get something halfway through your career that's better than the thing you started out with, but mostly your concepts are the same.
Yeah, yeah. So somebody posted, Chris did in our channel, that the spec for PoE is IEEE 802.3AT. I couldn't remember that, and .BT it looks like. So there is that, you know, it's not a protocol per the TCP/IP stack, but it is an IEEE specification. Okay. So thank you for that, Chris.
Huh, so I did not know. I've never used it for anything. So, but maybe in the future.
Well, tell us about your helium hotspots.
I wish I could get one. That's yeah. So I started freelancing over at the Decentralized Wireless Foundation, and that's a foundation that oversees what's going on at Helium. Helium is they call it LongFi. It's a network that's set up for the Internet of Things. So you can get a hotspot, hang it out of your window, and basically allow everybody who has something that's low data, low power to communicate. I've been there for about 3 weeks, so let's not talk too much about the tech.
Right.
I'm not there yet. Hope to be there soon, but it's really a really cool community, very open source and anarchistic and friendly and all of the things that I really enjoy.
So I've heard you mention a couple communities. Do you have any other favorite ones that the hacker spaces and things? You know, I always had trouble with the word hack, like even Hackaday, hacker, because it connotates, because I do network and network security, hacker, connotates somebody trying to break into a system, not necessarily the other definition of trying to make stuff work in spite of itself.
Yeah. Or hacking meaning like having fun, right? Like when you're like, I'm going to go hack on this thing. Like,
or golfing.
Yeah. We're going to go have fun making something work or whatever for the weekend. Yeah. Agree.
So,
yeah. But hacker communities or just communities in general, I mean, Discord in general is really pretty great for tech communities. I think anyone who gets on Discord will, in the sort of hardware community, will immediately find themselves added to about 30 different things.
Yeah, I just wish they allowed threaded conversations. You know, the problem I have about Discord is it's like this big, long regurgitation, and you have to read it sequentially. I'm not a sequential person, especially in my age where my attention span is so limited. And so I wish Discord would allow, like under projects, you could have different people's projects as something you could click down into, rather than just kind of an ongoing chat free-for-all. That's my comment on Discord.
Yeah, agree. I mean, I think, you can
and Slack.
Yeah, one reply.
Yeah.
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 So since you do networking, I'm going to point you towards, ask you to try something out, not on this immediate, but I'm also freelancing at a place called Tailscale. And I'm doing like user research, product, customer kind of stuff. And I've been there also not long enough to really dig into the tech, although it's a VPN. It's a local VPN. So you can put it on like all of your devices, and it's free for if you're just like one person, or for a lot of people, it's free. It works so easily. As someone who struggled putting all the other VPNs, like I had ExpressVPN when I went to China a couple times, every time. Then OpenVPN, which was a total pain in the ass and kept dropping.
Yes.
And so, in Tailscale, I work there too, but I also really enjoy using the product. And one of the features, not said in like an advertising way, just more like, oh, I really like this, is there's something that's like AirDrop. They call it TailDrop, or we call it TailDrop. And so it's a file transfer system. So you eliminate the cloud. So I, like many people, I often make fun of myself because I have like 5 computers and they're all like, and Raspberry Pis and stuff. Like they're all over the house. And I bet you do too. Everybody.
My 48 port switch has only 4 open ports on it. Yeah.
Okay. So yes. So it's not like, yeah, I always feel like kind of guilty, like about having so many computers, but factually they're all old, and why get rid of them when they can all do like different things? So I love that I can send stuff between each computer really easily without involving Google Drive, and I hate Dropbox. Like I have Dropbox, but I hate it.
I just realized they were billing me monthly. I mean, they got me. I actually forgot that I'd used Dropbox for a project that we needed it, and I realized suddenly that they're billing me $9 a month for it, and it's stuff I hadn't used in 3 years.
Oh,
so yeah.
Yeah, that really sucks. Yeah, I don't like the way Dropbox shows up all their folders. I can never find anything in there. And I mean, I'll use it if someone that I'm working with says that we're going to use it. I don't really care. I'll use it. But Google Drive has been my go-to. And now I'm just basically transferring things in between my computers, which is amazing.
Well, that is cool, because I use Dropbox to transfer. The one use I have for it is I run a program where I need the configs to be on all my workstations that I work with. It's based between these programs, and it's encrypted and everything, because I trust nobody. Mm-hmm. But if there was a VPN-ish way to do that is, encryption at rest, all that'd be very cool, actually.
Yeah, I'll send you it for the show.
Yeah, tell us the name of it again, the product.
It's Tailscale, TAILSCALE.com.
Right. Now, I did something during the pandemic. Since we're talking about it in Google Drive, I wrote a book that's going to be coming out. Yeah, I just dropped it, the fact, like last week, and somebody caught on to the fact I said it. But it's a book about my time at Commodore, and it's called Into the Storm, Design Engineer Stories from the 1980s.
Oh my God, I want to read that.
So it's like we got a couple hundred pages out of just my rambling. So I've been working with Margaret Morabito, who was an editor at the old Run magazine. And so that's what we did during the pandemic and it's taken us 1.5 years of uploading to Google Drive and making edits and whatnot. And it should be out in the next couple months, we're hoping, in time for VCF this year.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm definitely going to get a copy. Is it going to be on Kindle or just hard copy, or?
It'll be on both.
Okay.
So we're doing it through Amazon self-publishing. So we don't get a lot of money, but we didn't do it for the money,
So I'm going to get it on my Kindle, and then I'm going to get a hard copy and ask you to autograph it for me.
Yeah, not a problem. Hey, you should come to one of the VCFs. They're in Wall, New Jersey, which is northern New Jersey. Yep. So it's not that far from, I'm thinking, your stomping grounds are. I mean, it's still a drive, but it's not like it's 2 states away. It's only 1 state away.
It's like, I think VCF, which I've never been able to go to before because I've never actually been on this coast during it. When is it this year?
I believe it's going to be September this year, August or September. And we had Bill Mensch, the designer of the 6502 processor, was slated to be there last year, and then everything fell through, or the year before. I've lost track of time now. So I actually did an online interview with him, but it's not the same as being there in person. So Bill should be back this year, and so anybody that's into 6502ness, come to the Vintage Computer Festival, or they call it Vintage Computer Foundation now, or some federation. But that's in Wall, New Jersey, in August or September. VCF.org is how to find that.
Okay. Yeah, I've never been to one of those. I actually went to a Vintage Computer Festival in Berlin.
Berlin, Germany, not Berlin, New Jersey, I'm thinking.
Not Berlin, New Jersey.
that was a big show for us back in the old Commodore days, and I'm trying to think of what the name of the show was. I can't remember. It's not Comstock or something. There was a name for the German show.
What is Comstock?
A name I just made up. That's what I'm saying. I can't remember the name of the show we used to. So it's funny. It was real important then, and then 30 years later, it's not. So
How funny.
So you do a lot of art things, right? I almost said artsy. I've got your website up here, and this is just beautiful, Sophie, some of these things. Oh, is that your blimp that you were talking about?
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
and that's
go up to the very top. So it's sort of in chronological order. I actually like, yeah, so that one right there, you click on it inside. So this is a Lazy Susan. So if you scroll down a little bit more, there are no electronics in it. Spoiler.
Okay.
Yeah, it's at the wood. So this is 2 pieces of routed wood. It's 36 inches in diameter, and there's a 24-inch bearing inside of that. And
okay,
I'll show you, like, there's a much harder spinning thing that was that me and Oliver, my husband, designed like a couple of years ago that prefaced this. But this, because of the pandemic, there was so much, like, we put all of our like dry stuff, we just like stocked up on pasta, you know, because you couldn't leave the house, and there was nowhere to put it, or the place that to put it was just basically like a pile in this cubby. So I made that to kind of help organize.
So tell me about the artwork that's on it. I assume this is what the cover of it looks like now.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I got it printed in vinyl. So I did that in combination of Illustrator and Photoshop. Photoshop's like the thing I use the most to draw, but also I used Unity, which is a gaming program, or a program that people design games in, to make the clouds. Because Unity has these backgrounds, these really beautiful backgrounds that they call them skyboxes. And so they're almost like panoramic fantasy like skyboxes. So I took everything that I knew about drawing in Unity and kind of made it into that. And then there's like a ball of yarn on the bottom that's really collaged in.
Right. Well, I get the pasta reference now since you described why you built this. Yeah. I didn't get that at first.
Yeah, so there's a meaning to it. Also, I applied with this, which I didn't get in. I applied to a lot of art shows that I don't get into, but I applied, and one of the sort of more artsy things I said about it was, it's like full circle, going through the pandemic.
Right.
But it's genuine, you know? I mean, there's spaghetti on top of it. Scroll down a little bit more, though, because I want to talk about the bearing stuff. That's really interesting.
Oh, on this one?
No, well, that has just a ring bearing, but go down more, in like way more. That on the right? Nope. There's something that someone's spinning on.
Is this is the Love Dome? Is that from Burning Man?
It was from Maker Faire. Where was it first? I think, yeah, it was Burning Man first. Then it went to a couple of Maker Fairs. It's been to 7 festivals. So it's had a lot of different like incarnations of it. Right.
I remember when you went to Burning Man back at Hackaday, and you posted, it said, "Stop talking about the bugs," you know, because that was supposed to be the year of the bugs.
Yeah, I've had so many projects at Burning Man of my own, and I've worked on other people's projects. A couple of years ago, I worked on a friend, Lucas, his project that is called Ethereal Fleeting, and it was a cloud machine, or is a cloud machine. Like, he's touring Europe with that still. That had a bunch of fog machines that went up through long tubes that were 20 or 30 feet up in the air, I think. And they made clouds. So my collaborators that I mentioned before, Matt and Adele, they wrote a lot of the software for it, and Oliver, my husband, worked on it. Like, there were a lot of people. I think there was probably 15 people who worked on that project.
Wow. Hey, somebody asked on the channel what the volume of the blimp was.
Ooh, it held 16 grams. It could lift 16 grams. Let me see if I can backtrack. It's 1 liter, volumetric liter of helium to 1 gram weight of lift. So I guess 16
liters then.
16 liters of helium. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
So now is this this picture we're looking at here, is this like your area? Is this your lab or somebody else's?
This is my husband's lab.
Husband's?
Yeah. So this is my lab. He has a lab. This is in the house. He has a lab somewhere else. And there's a welding table there. And this is where we made this, another spinner that was made to hold people.
Right. Right. Yeah, one of the Hackaday videos that it was on my maybe list, and it's still there, is to do one on welding, because I do have a MIG welder. I've got a TIG welder. I've got a cheap TIG welder that I'm not a good enough TIG welder to overcome its deficiencies with my own deficiencies. But then I just actually troubleshot and got my plasma cutter working. So, it'd be the kind of, you and I were talking before the show about the fiberglass video I did and how people reacted, oh, this is fun type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one on welding would be cool, because it's an easy, I don't want to say it's an art to learn how to do, but it's not hard to learn how to do.
You're absolutely right. Like, I had a job as a welder, like a long time ago, making like animatronics for Windows. And we used MIG welders, and it was really like using a glue gun. Once you got used to it,
yes, yeah,
you're like, but you're blind and using a glue gun.
Right.
Have your welding shield on. I mean, except if you get a really fancy one, it'll just like it does the shutter glass thing where it goes dark as soon as you weld. Sorry,
I have a couple of those. Yeah. I've got an expensive Miller brand one with flames on it and stuff. Then I have a cheap, overseas one.
You should absolutely do a welding video, and do it with the MIG, because I think it's so accessible. Like, how much is a MIG welder? Maybe like $200?
You can probably get them for that. I think mine was like $1,000. It was just, a really good Miller one. I see your husband has red. We go off the colors. Like, red is usually Lincoln and blue is Miller. So I'm a blue fan, right?
Okay. I don't know. There's a lot. This is actually a shared shop, a shared machine shop.
Right.
There's a lot of welders there. I don't know who.
There is a lot of welders there. My eyes went right to the tank. So, yeah, if you look in my garage, there's a tank of argon and a tank of Trimix, and yeah.
I have an acetylene tank under my bench here.
That's cool.
Yeah, because I used to do like silversmithing, like for jewelry, and bought an acetylene tank. It's a B size. It's not an oxyacetylene, just acetylene. And it's kind of like, once you have the tank, it's just sort of like a thing, right? It's like a dead weight that just sits in your shop. It's not the kind of thing you sell, really. It's not really the kind of thing you can return. You can, I guess. I guess the welding supply would take it, but why? Why would I return it? Because I might need it someday.
I have an oxyacetylene rig also, and I'm actually a little afraid. I think the tank is out of date, and acetylene is it gets angry, as they say. There's actually a foam core in there to keep it from getting too agitated if you drop it. And it's like, oh, yay, I have a bomb in my... But I actually built a building around it. I was in it before the show about all the blacksmithing with the... what's the name of that show where they make knives real in like 2 days or something like that?
I know.
But anyways,
filming.
What's that?
That show is actually, it's a reality show, and it's filming.
Yeah, it's a reality show, and I can't remember the name of it. Somebody will come up with it. But I have a blacksmith shop I made that I haven't been out in at all during the pandemic. It was like I was inside for the pandemic, but so I've got an anvil. that I'm real proud of. You know, it's I had somebody over west who's part of the channel, and I showed him and I'm there whacking the anvil because I just love the sound of the ring of hard brittle surf, you know, or not brittle, but hard metal hitting hard metal. It's oh, that's right. I did a Hackaday video on blacksmithing. I've forgotten all about it.
Oh. But you should definitely do a welding video. You know, and what would be really helpful, I think, for people, first of all, to just see that MIG welding is pretty, like, easy in terms of welding, but also how to make, like, your basic, like, just how to set up clamps to hold something straight when you weld, because I think that's really frustrating. Do you know BOCES?
Do I know what?
What BOCES is?
No, I don't.
I think it's vocational school in New York. Maybe I thought maybe
okay,
because it's of New Jersey.
I thought you were asking about a type of clamp. Yeah, no, I don't know what it's.
I forgot what it stands for, but they have welding classes and certifications and so on.
Yeah, and true to form, I have a welding table I made myself while welding, right? And yes, you're absolutely right. You know, getting your material stable and held just right, undercutting it so you get separation. You know, it's all, but it's a blast. When I smell that smell, it's like, ooh, cool.
Yeah, I mean, with a good setup, you know, like people will get really good results.
Yeah, yeah. So, anything else? We're coming up at the top of the hour. Anything else? I have questions here off this. That's very cool looking.
Yeah, that was. I do a lot of prototyping in paper, that for metal.
What's there's a technique for doing stuff in paper. I can't remember the name of it.
You mean
ectometry or something.
Wait, say it again.
I was going to say ectometry or something like that. My memory is just horrible. Pectrometry, but it's like how people were making Star Wars helmets and stuff. They would print this, and it's got all the folds that you sit there and fold. It's kind of like origami, but when you're done, you have a polygon-based Star Wars helmet.
Yeah, I don't know what that's called, but I absolutely love that. I mean, I'll say, since we have like 2 minutes, I'll say just an interesting tidbit about doing stuff in paper. Like, so this is just art stuff, but there is something to do with the art of folding paper so that you can get the biggest surface area.
Right. Right.
Like the least amount of folds to get the largest surface area. And that technology or those algorithms are used in like pill delivery. So giving someone a pill that's folded up, a medicine, and that will unfold into the largest surface area. And so I think that paper, like I was doing paper folding for art, like doing platonic solids and so on. And then that sort of led into like a bunch of research, which is like, wow, people are using these concepts for like real shit, like real science.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, during the pandemic, I kind of did a refresher course on proteins. And you know, because the virus shell is protein and why I'd forgotten that a lipid was part of it. But the whole thing about a protein is the way it folds up. It's literally, it's all about the folding and the surface area and the surface features and the binding sites and all those things. So it was all very cool. So any last, boy, you just got some cool projects here. I love color, and I see you just like your love dome here, the color that's in that. I'm trying to think of the project. Didn't you have a lit bicycle one time or something at?
No, that was I think Lemore designed something like that. I think talking about that, like bicycle stuff. No, I've never done a bicycle project. Well, I mean,
and what's
things to hang like.
What's this love box? What's this thing?
This is another heartbeat thing, and it's kind of funny. I designed it before anyone came out with like a MIDI interface that was good for makers. So each heartbeat sensor, each oximeter has its own sound soundboard. So individual noises, and the idea is there's actually another one of these that has more than three, but three people together can make a drum circle.
I'm wondering if the heartbeats ever synchronize, because there's a whole thing about synchronicity in different mechanical and electrical systems, and it can be anything from somebody walking on a bridge to multiple phase lock or multiple those all hooked in parallel. By nature, we try to synchronize. So if you were watching your heartbeat, I assume that these lights light up with your heartbeat. Is that what they did?
And they also have, I left the data collection thing in there, so you can see the number of your heartbeat as well. So no, people try to sync up.
Yeah, it never worked.
Oh, but actually, here's something I will talk about syncing up. So I've been participating with a friend, a workout buddy, exercise buddy, Teresa, recently at a chain workout place called Orange Theory, and they give you a armband which measures your heartbeat, and
right.
I think it just measures your heart rate and then does some other sort of quantified self calculations, and it puts it up on a big screen. So you'll have like 20 participants in a class, and each person has a heartbeat, and then also it's color coded. So it'll be like, you're in the red zone, you're in the orange zone. Orange, of course, is like where you want to be because you're 85% more than what your resting heart rate is. And then red, like today I got in red where it was like 100% of your heart rate. I'm like, oh my God, I better start walking. But what's interesting is that this is the first time for me that I've actually seen 20 people's heart rates at the same time, all kind of doing the same, like everybody at the same time is like going up and in rate and then going down in rate. There's a lot of variation.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
So geeky that like the entire time, I think that's the thing that I like about the class the most, because I think that the music and stuff is not that good. But I definitely enjoy looking at all the charts through the whole class.
Wow. Yeah, you were geeking out during the class, in other words.
Totally. I went this morning. Yeah, it was fun.
So I got to ask, that's you shared that's a LaCroix oscilloscope behind you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're in oscilloscopes. So you had a couple others, you said?
Yeah, I do. So this one here, this like old one, this Speco. Can you see this? This like analog.
Yeah.
It actually has two channels and only one of them works well. One of them is sort of flickery on and off, and I don't know enough about it to try to fix it. I bought that like the day that I graduated on eBay for $150. I had no idea.
Right.
I interned or worked at a place for a couple of years. More than like 3 years I worked at this place that was amazing, like as sort of intern. And we only had analog oscilloscopes.
Yeah. That's all I had back in the day. Yeah.
So,
and an oscilloscope costs easily what my annual salary was. So back when I was an engineer, you couldn't be an engineer at home. You couldn't afford the equipment. You had to go work in a lab that had $50,000 of 1980 dollars worth of equipment just to do the very first thing, to do anything as an engineer.
Totally. Yeah. I don't have an analyzer, and I bet now, I've seen some on eBay for like, well, they're still not that cheap actually. I don't know. They're definitely not less than $1,000 and usually more, but I would not mind having a spectrum analyzer, although it's not like I do work with it that like sort of makes me deserve to spend thousands of dollars on it. But I have this, like we were talking about this before the show, this thing, it's a little dusty, sorry. This is called, it's an OWON.
Okay.
WON. And it was slightly less expensive than a Rigol. And it was my go-to. It's a 2-channel scope. So I'd use that with the whatever this is, the Speco together to get extra channels.
Okay.
And the Speco never really worked right, not even from day one. So, but anyway, the OWON it's okay. It has a weird, what I think is like a delay in the resolution of the screen. So
okay.
whenever I'm looking at it, I'm just like, I feel like things are happening on the board, but it's not quite
making it to the screen.
Yeah, something. But I used it. I mean, I used it for years. And then LaCroix was bought by Teledyne LaCroix now. They're local to me and to you. Like, they're in Chestnut, New York.
Okay.
I visited their factory a few years ago. Hillary Lustig is their marketing engineer.
I get emails from her every 3 days. Yes.
Okay. Oh, Hillary is awesome.
Yeah. But I get she has a marketing email list that she pounds weekly. Yeah.
Oh, I think I'm not on that list. So one of my high school friends or college friends ended up working there and invited me to come tour because it's local. And I spent several hours there, like geeking out with oscilloscope engineers. Like Leah, my friend, just left me in the oscilloscope design area. And I mean, they have some really freaking cool stuff. Like,
yeah,
screens, like where you can see, like, I remember looking at something that was like, you could look at 32 analog channels at the same time. And it was like fast and clean and nice and big. And I was like, I want to have that thing. And it's like,
oh yeah, they have stuff that like big screens. And yeah, I've started watching a YouTube channel called The Signal Path, I think.
Oh yeah.
And and he's got some of the gear on there that you just go, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
And he did a teardown on how many 100 gig scope, where basically it broke it into 128 gig, where it breaks it down into 4 time divisional multiplex 64 gig channels, each of which was broken down into 4 more channels. You know, so it's all this time divisional stuff to get up to 100 gig, but 100 gig real time scope that just blows my mind away.
Yeah. Same. I mean.
Somebody mentioned folding would be valuable in capacitors. So there's a great example of surface area and whatnot.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll say then in closing, we were talking about blimps, and Dawn, remember Adam from Hackaday?
Yeah.
He's a qualified blimp driver. He used to fly a blimp, if my memory is right. I think he flew a blimp in like the Philadelphia arena and stuff. He was qualified to fly over people, basically. So as just, how do you get that qualification, without being dedicated to a craft, I wonder?
I have no idea, but I will say, like, doing the blimp stuff, I felt like I met everybody who does blimps.
It's a community, I'm willing to bet.
Totally. Like, so many people were not so many, like the 20 people who are into blimps in the world were contacting me like, oh, can I work on your controller? Can I give you a controller? Can I sell you blimps? And I'm like, like blimp community.
Very cool. Hey, Sophie, I really appreciate you stepping in for a show with us here. This has been a blast, and it's been good. I haven't seen you since New York, so it's been good virtually. No, that's not true. I saw you 2 years ago at the hackathon. Yeah, it was quick, but yeah.
No, it wasn't. I don't think it was that quick. I think we were filming, right? Wasn't I filming you talk for a while?
Oh, so one thing I got to tell you about Sophie, she knows everybody. So at the hackathon, she's now thinking of, I think, she goes, hey, there was a line waiting for people to get into the Hackaday hackathon. And she said, grab your camera, let's go out and interview people. So we do. We just start going down the line. And it wasn't later till I tried to make a video out of it. And they didn't use it because of the traffic noise. We didn't have like a good microphone or anything. But I start looking at the people, and like one of the guys was the art director from Toy Story. It's just like everybody you talked to and knew was like somebody in the field, out there. And so it was all very cool. So,
yeah, great. That was a really great time.
Yeah. So, well, thank you again for joining us, and we'll get some more projects going, and we'll have to have you back on someday.
Thank you. Yeah, it was super catching up with you, Bill. And
yeah,
thanks Ben for giving up his.
Yeah, Ben was sorry he couldn't be. We were trying to save having you on to when all three of us could be on together. So just so everybody knows, I met Ben through Sophie. Again, she knows everybody. And Ben had done a hack chat on auto routers, I think, and I missed it, but you hooked me up with him. And that's how I ended up being a friend of Altium now. I ended up as a keynote speaker there and stuff. All from you, Sophie. So thank you for that. So, well, we'll catch it.